Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to a bit more Rome 2 Total War, and we're going back to Bactria because my video for this got taken down and I kind of got distracted for quite some time, and big patch coming in. It's going to change everything completely. I'll go quickly over that because this is by far like the biggest balance patch that they've got in the pipework so far. So talking about Bactria, let's just go through their units really quickly, and then we'll take a very, very brief look at them on the campaign map. Nothing too serious, but let's go first through their generals here. You can have your general with the Bactrian Rail Cavalry. They're a sort of a heavy shock cavalry unit. They're not the heaviest, but they do the job okay. It would be nice if you could include them in the Hellenic Royal Cataphracts, which this faction has access to. But the Bactrian Royal Cavalry are a solid enough choice. Now the next type is the Bactrian Royal Guard. This is a peculiar melee infantry choice, and I'll talk about it later. It's not a terrible place for your general to be, though. Lastly, of course, there's the Indian Armored Elephants. These guys, durable as all get out, they trample over everything. They're just sort of the big reason why you want to have them in your army. I don't like putting my general in them. The way the game currently works, the shock cavalry is just so durable now compared to the way it used to be, especially for these eastern factions, that I don't feel too worried about putting my general in the shock cavalry anymore like I used to, but I also like putting them in the Bactrian Royal Guard from time to time. It's a good solid unit. The problem is that none of these units are the one that I'd really like them to be in, something like Royal Peltasts. The Bactrians simply don't have those kinds of units. Moving on to melee infantry, this is the area where Bactria sort of suffers. They've got Thorax Swordsmen, and they've got Bactrian Hillmen, and that's it. Bactrian Hillmen, like all axe units, currently are really just trash. I wouldn't ever take them. And the Thorax Swordsmen are in a peculiar place because they're sort of like a spear unit more than anything. They've got high defensive value, they've got high armor, and they've got fairly low attack though for a sword unit, which makes it peculiar since they don't fulfill their personal niche all that well. And what they do is almost more like a hoplite unit. Moving on to hoplite and spear units, they've got the Eastern Spearmen. These guys, just again, sort of a filler unit. Take it if you've got like 230 points, you want to have something, I guess, to sort of guard your archers if you really have to, but they're not really great. They're not really going to do much. Thurios Spears, these guys, again, a fairly solid spear unit. I quite like them. They're not great, and they're not going to do a whole lot, but they're a pretty cheap, effective unit. Next is Scale Thorax Hoplites. These are the ones that I actually like with Bactria. The Scale Thorax Hoplites, they're very durable. They've got really high melee defense. They've got strong, solid armor, good hit points, good morale. All around a fairly solid hoplite unit. And last up, the Bactrian Royal Guard. Now these guys are very strange. They've got huge armor. They've got good melee defense. They've got surprisingly good melee attack for a spear unit, and they've also got Frenzied Charge, which means that these guys are capable of running in and really just doing a lot of melee damage on the charge, which is very peculiar for a hoplite spear unit. Now, typically you're not actually going to want to use Frenzied Charge on these guys. You're going to want to keep them in a sort of disciplined formation. You're going to want to use them as a spear hoplite unit, as you would normally do. But if you're against an army where you don't feel like you want to, your army being engaged in a long ground-out fight, the Bactrian Royal Guard can pop that Frenzied Charge and do a really devastating charge for a spear unit that people would not normally expect from them, and which lets them sort of almost pull their weight as a sort of pseudo sword unit, one that is more like a sort of medium sword unit or a high quality sword unit, which is very sort of good. It sort of sets them apart from other ones in that sort of versatility, but they're inferior to a lot of other elite hoplite units in that they're a little bit worse at static defense. For that versatility, so keep that in mind when you're using them. I'm not sure what I would actually use them, since typically I prefer using the Scale Thorax Hoplites. But moving on to pikes, you've got the Levy Pikemen, very cheap throwaway sort of units. They're fairly okay at their job. It's just that pikemen. Next up, pikemen are actually terrible. Still, I've still preferred to take the Levy Pikemen over the regular pikemen, just because pikes don't really get much of a bonus, really, compared to levy pikes. It's not really enough that I think it justifies their cost. But of course, the Thorax Pikeman is that big jump upwards that I think is where the breaking point is of when they are worthwhile, especially that sort of morale boost difference. I think that the Thorax Pikeman, very solid unit still for its cost. Missile Infantry. The Bactrians have a huge range of missile infantry to the point where they're actually considered to be a skirmishing type army, and I sort of agree with that sentiment. You've got Eastern Slingers, all sorts of archers, many of them with 150 range, which makes them fairly solid. A lot of them also have access to heavy shot, which makes them pretty good. I actually still mostly use Eastern Slingers, the reason being that Bactria, I find, doesn't have too many problems dealing with things that you would use archers against. You typically use archers against either other skirmishers, or I use archers against things like elephants, but Eastern Slingers, unlike other types of slingers, are so high damage with such a good rate of fire, especially when they've popped precision shot, that they can actually do a really good number on things like elephants. And then of course you've got the sort of different types of peltists. Now, with a lot of factions, what I like are the light peltists, which is sort of the case for these guys as well, but because they've got the 12 ammunition, high missile damage, and they've got all those sort of other abilities, compared to the heavier peltists, which only have 9 ammunition, and that means that while they're a little bit more durable with their 60 armor compared to the 35 armor, they don't have as many javelins by 3, which is a pretty big deal. But then we get to the Bactrian peltists, which is the sort of interesting unit. I don't use them that often, but when I do, I usually quite like what they manage. They've got 12 ammunition like the light peltists, but they've got the heavier statistics like the other peltists, and they've actually got pretty okay things like weapon damage, melee attack, melee defense, and armor, and that makes them actually capable of fighting off lighter units in melee combat. It lets them sort of absorb more of a cavalry charge if they absolutely have to. They're still terrible at it, but all that sort of makes it so that they can fight more reliably in combat than you would normally expect a peltist unit to do. If you're going to have that style, if you throw those 12 javelins really quickly with rapid quick reload, and then charge in, these guys are actually quite decent at that. If you think that 9 javelins just isn't going to be enough for you. It's still in a confusing place though. Javelins are still kind of difficult to use, and of course the other type of javelin are the Eastern Javelin Men. Now, Eastern Javelin Men are interesting. They do a lot more damage and they have precision shot instead of rapid reload. And the thing about this is it makes it so that they're a little bit more efficient sometimes, because they can get rid of their javelins really quickly. They'll die off much faster and they run out of ammo faster, but they do more damage per shot. So that means that those 9 javelins that they threw off quickly and then died to do actually did probably more damage in that period of time than if you used the other types of peltists. So they're a pretty good deal as well if you happen to be using peltists for any reason, but all those sorts of different units for these guys I think are kind of pretty good, and the fact that they've got so many different types of peltists makes it so that they're a faction that I actually consider taking them in, even though I mostly stick to slingers. Anyway, moving on to Shock Cavalry, we've got Bactrian Royal Cavalry, and we've got Hellenic Cataphracts. Hellenic Cataphracts, again, they're a little bit inferior to Parthian Cataphracts, Royal Cataphracts, sorry, but they're as good as the Seleucid ones. They're exactly the same. They're very high quality, they're very durable, a good all-around unit, and it's the sort of one that you want to use if you need to punch through something fairly reliably. The Bactrian Royal Cavalry is a little bit weaker, but they can manage just fine against most things. They're a weight category below the Hellenic Cataphracts and will fight sort of accordingly. One of the things I like to do though is I prefer taking the Bactrian Royal Cavalry and I mix them in with a Scale Thorax Hoplite unit, and the combination of that will beat 2 Hellenic Cataphracts for a fraction of the cost, so it's a good way to deal with that if you don't have the points or the money to make up 4 units of Hellenic Cataphracts. Moving on, we got Melee Cavalry, Bactrian Light Horse. Those guys are only any good for running down skirmishers and such. You'll notice that these guys, unlike the Seleucids, lack camels, which is really a pretty big detriment actually in the Cav versus Cav engagements. But they've got Citizen Cavalry and Bactrian Noble Horse. The Bactrian Noble Horse, I'm not really sure how I feel about them. I typically don't use them because the Bactrian Royal Cavalry is so good, and the Hellenic Cataphracts are so good and durable as well. Typically you want melee cavalry if you want a durable cavalry unit, but the Hellenic Cataphracts just completely outstrip them in that. The only reason that the Bactrian Noble Horse is still a contender is that they're cheaper by quite a lot, so they're a good holding cavalry for a discount price. Moving on, we got missile units. These guys have a unique type of horse archer. It's 360 points. It does less missile damage by 3 points, but these I think are probably my favorite missile cavalry in the game. They've got the same sort of range characteristics. They've got the same sort of Parthian shot ability of other ranged archers. They're just cheaper, and that for horse archers, that's all it really matters, is that you get them for cheap, because like the actual arrow fire is what you're looking for, and their arrow fire is pretty similar to the mercenary Scythian horse archers. Moving on from that, we've got the horse skirmishers. I don't like them because they can't Parthian shot. We've got the Tarentine cavalry, similar sort of story there, but I do use Tarentines sometimes if I feel like I want to have that versatility of being able to charge them in as well, since these guys are quite good at clearing away skirmishers. They're a little bit more durable. And then of course we've got the Bactrian horse archers, who are pretty interesting. They're tough, they've got decent missile damage and all that, but they're very expensive for what they do. I'm not really sure I can justify taking them when I could just take the regular horse archers and then use the money I saved to upgrade my actual cavalry, melee cavalry. Moving on, elephants, Indian war elephant, Indian armored elephants. These guys are sort of the standard of what you would expect these to be at this sort of stage of the game. We all know and love what they do, so that's the Bactrian army. They've got a very sort of interesting mix, and I actually think that they're probably my favorite army as is, just because they've got such a good balance of different types of units that don't rely on sort of sword spamming and charging in headlong, and they don't rely on like hyper elite pike lines. They have to be a sort of combined arms force. People have tried cav spamming with them. I don't think that they're the best faction for that. I do think that if you're going to do that, Parthia or the nomadic tribes are stronger at that. The only reason that you would take something like Bactria and do that with them is because people have to prepare in case you take a more infantry-heavy army, whereas the other ones, they don't have to worry as much about an infantry-heavy army. Anyway, let's head into the campaign. I hope this does not overwrite my legendary save. God. That would be the worst. Okay, these guys are under the Successor Kingdoms. They fight in the Hellenic style just like the Seleucids, so we're going to go ahead and click them. Now if we look at their abilities against Successor Conflicts and Alexander's Legacy, we've seen these before, but they've also got Bactrian Prosperity, plus 5% wealth from industrial and commerce buildings, Hellenization, plus 4 to cultural conversion, and Nomadic Enmity, major diplomatic penalty with all nomadic tribes. And that would be things like the sort of, here they are, the Roxolani, the Massagetei, and the Royal Scythians are all sort of that category of thing. So these guys start off far to the right and north of the map, where there are sort of nomadic tribes going around. Anyway, let's start this campaign up. Alright, so here we are on the campaign map. As you can see, we basically start in the top right corner of the map. We can't actually go any further east than this, and we can barely go further north. All we can do is take over Kath. And there's another province up here, I forget who it was, I think it was like the Roxolani or something like that, one of the sort of lousy nomadic factions. But anyway, you actually have a really great position here at the start of the game, since you can only really advance in a couple different directions. You're at corner camping basically as Bactria, which is sort of scummy, but I mean, it's not their fault that they're on the edge of civilization as it's known. But anyway, these guys start off with fairly weak units to recruit. As you can see, they've got the field muster field here, but if we go to this army and go to recruit here, we've got Levy Pikemen, Bactrian Hillmen, Eastern Spearmen, Eastern Javelin, and Eastern Slingers. These are really bad units, but the area that you're in, they're not too terrible by comparison to what you're going to be fighting against. And once you've upgraded this to the Holosideros barracks, you're going to have access to pikemen. You can upgrade this further pretty easily without too much difficulty to the second level of the Hoplite Barracks, at which point you've got access to some really strong units, such as, let's see where the hell they are down here. You know what, I can't navigate this sometimes, but you basically get like your Thorax Hoplites, and you get like your Thorax pikemen with that. I think that was what it was, but even without that, what you can do early on is that thing that I've been doing with some of my other armies, where you go into details, you go to general details, and you replace this guy with him and hire, and you put him in a unit of Hellenic Cataphracts. You can't use the elephant, but the Hellenic Cataphracts are actually really, really, really strong at this stage of the game, and you'll basically be able to roll over most enemies that you get in contact with. But you are going to eventually want to have elephants as well in this region, because then it's just auto-win. But yeah, that's basically Bactria's army position. They've got a really great start. They've got a really great economy rolling already. As you can see, 3,385 per turn without having done anything. Bactria on the campaign map is probably one of my favorite factions out there because they've got such an interesting tech progression by comparison to so many other people. So many other people have this weird state where they've got these really, really terrible units and then suddenly they jump to like Oathsworn or whatever, like way down the line, but it's like awful units, awful units, awful units, Oathsworn. And there's nothing sort of intermediary between that's worth taking. These guys have very, very distinct levels of technology as far as their troops go, and I really, really like that fact by contrast to a lot of other factions that sort of rely on just building, like if we look at the Seleucids over here, if they build the level 3 Hoplite Barrack, they get access to Royal Peltas, which are basically crush everything elite infantry. The Bactrians get Thorax Pikemen, Thorax Swordsmen, and Thurios Spears, which are not as good of units. These guys are sort of all middle tier units. They're actually very solid middle tier units though. And if we go to the final stage of this, if we look at them, we finally get the Bactrian Royal Guard and we got Scale Thorax Hoplites, which are really good units. They're extremely potent units that work out very well. And if we look at the Royal Stables as well, it's sort of a similar thing here. We get Hellenic Royal Guard and we get the Indian Armored War Elephants. If we go one step back, it's the Bactrian Royal Cavalry and the Indian War Elephants. And if we go even one step further back, it's the like all the sort of lighter cavalry, like citizen cavalry and all that. So there's a very distinct progression, whereas like with the Seleucids over here, if we just go up one chain, actually I think they're similar in cavalry, but like it's that Royal Peltist thing. They just go up one and suddenly they've got Royal Peltists, and it's really kind of strange that they make that big jump. The Bactrians, I think, are really fun for that reason. You can sort of progress your technology up and it really feels sort of more natural and organic that each troop has a distinct sort of a tier to it. Because of that, I actually do like getting the military stuff fairly early just so I can get the Holosideros barracks relatively fast and then get up to the Hoplite barracks, which makes it so that you can upgrade to those really good troops. But I do also like working on the economy as the Bactrians. They've got probably some of the best options in the game as far as just trying to make sure that you've got your technology however you want it. You can do whatever you want with them. You don't have to worry about the naval battles, which I've never really liked in most Total War games. The only one I liked in is Empire and Fall of the Samurai, but you've got a lot of options in terms of what you can do. And I quite like that. For expansion, I typically like to sort of take out the nomadic factions around here. They dislike me quite a bit. So there's the Dahe up here. You can take those guys out pretty easily. They dislike you quite a bit. These guys are your trade partner, but they dislike you quite a bit as well, so it's not too difficult to make them declare war on you as well. And once you've done that, things get to open up for you a little bit. One of the things that I like to do, of course, is their typical move your spy up to a province and have it murder their general here. Once that general's murdered, it's pretty easy for me to roll in with this army with the Hellenic Royal Cataphracts that I'm going to be recruiting from there, declare war on them and sack their city pretty much on the first turn, if not the second turn. And that's going to just sort of give me more opportunities to expand, more opportunities to buy buildings and all that. So Bactria starts off in a really great position on the map. They've got a very interesting start with a lot of options. They're not too weak. They're not dominating in the region, and they've got a lot of people that they can declare war on. So I quite like them for that reason. Anyway, that is Bactria in the campaign. And let's get on to a battle. Okay, so here we are in the battlefield. I've opted to not use my strong shooting or skirmishing potential because we are against the Romans in this particular instance. And lately there have been a lot of Roman players who have been playing a very peculiar style where they actually can kind of have a lot of really strong infantry, but they don't have any shooting, or sorry, they actually have tons of shooting for some reason. So what we can actually do is like rush those sort of players down a little bit, and that's sort of what I hope to do here. I've just got to those skirmishers there in case he actually has a complete 100% melee spam army or something like that. And the reason that they've been doing this is against a faction like Bactria, they can't really afford to just rush up and beat me head on typically, so they need to have some sort of reason why they can sort of beat my pikes and beat my strong cavalry, and to do that they typically take a lot of really good spear units, well, decent spear units, the Triarii. I wouldn't say they're actually great. So they take the Triarii and they take a lot of skirmishers themselves. They take 3 of their units of those archers, and what they do is they make it so that I can't really advance because I'm using pikes, and they start whittling down those pikes and with their arrows until I just don't have any infantry left, and then they smash into it, and they don't have any cavalry at all. It's a very sort of peculiar thing, or they'll have very limited numbers of cavalry. It's a pretty interesting way to play Rome. I think it has limitations, and I personally don't play them like that, but I can see the merit in it against a faction like Bactria, because they know I can't bring the scary shock infantry that I could normally use. If I was, for example, playing as the Galatians, with the Galatian Royal Guard using Egypt, for instance, they run the risk of me having like 6 Galatian Royal Guard units, at which point like his Triarii don't matter because I can just smash straight into his army head first and actually win that really easily. That doesn't work with these pikes as well. I have to sort of inch my way forward into his units. Yeah, if you look at his army, that's sort of what he's got here, and that's sort of what I was kind of expecting here. I think it's effective in a certain respect, and I think that it's a good way to play Rome. It's just not the way I personally like playing Rome. Yeah, we're going to show you, I guess, how to rush down with pikes a little bit. But as you can see, we've got our strong core center with these Thorax pikemen. And the reason I'm doing this is because against Rome, you always do run that risk that they're just outright going to have a lot of melee infantry. And even now, they've got quite a lot of melee infantry. I have to be very careful about that. And we're going to just skirmish around a little bit with our archers here and try and pick away at these Numidians a little bit, potentially. If they get too close, we can go ahead and charge them with our cataphracts here. Looks like they're backing off, that's fine. We're going to approach sort of from the side where we've got the woods working for our favor. What's our range on these guys?
We have discovered the enemy's hidden units.
Okay, I don't want to move actually too close here. Okay, so he's gotten a little bit too close, I think, with these Praetorian Guard here. And we're going to try and cause him to pay for that mistake. Because we can actually probably smash into these Praetorian Guard and cause a lot of damage to them. Oops. There we go.
Double time. Quick march.
So those Praetorian Guard took a really big hit from our cataphracts there. Cataphracts being, of course, ridiculously scary. And these auxiliary cavalry are going to get met with elephants, so this combination is going to probably brutalize the entire formation here. And with the additional charge of our general here, along with our drag-through sort of tactics with this elephant, we're going to wipe out this group pretty much no problem. I don't want to get too close to those archers, but we're going to have to worry a little bit about that. Okay, so we've shattered this sort of area here. Those Velites, we're going to try and get them cleared off the field. And we're doing okay shooting at these guys and sort of exchanging. Not great. They're still getting shots off at us, but it looks like we haven't taken any casualties because of it yet. Those cataphracts need to get the hell out of there. Okay, and we're going to start rushing in here. Just because, why the hell not? Now, we want to be able to get in from multiple angles, and that's sort of exactly what we're doing here. I'm going to actually back off with these Hellenic cataphracts.
Quickly now. Ready and waiting. At speed.
And as you can see, we're going to get around with these cataphracts so that we've got a better angle. These legionaries are basically toast. And as you can see, we've sort of run up to these guys as fast as we could, without actually committing necessarily to an attack. We're going to get these elephants way the hell over on this right flank here, and that's going to let us push our way in. And we're going to get around the back here as well, stop these Velites from firing. these rampaging Indian armored war elephants doing pretty much work here. Okay, and we're going to want these guys getting over there. Let's see here. And we're going to try and clear off this stuff from the field. And this is something that people just don't expect, is getting rushed by pike armies. Because it just doesn't happen usually. But when it does, it's really, really, really disconcerting. It's really deadly. Okay. And as you can see, we're just sort of gonna clear this off. Yeah, there we go. And those legionaries are gone too.
We have discovered the enemy's hidden units.
And basically all he's got left are some Triarii over here, but he's not going to be able to clear this off at this point. And yeah, this is sort of the army that I like to take, and it's against that sort of Roman army that has got superior shooting than you would normally expect of them. They've got Balearic Slingers, they've got auxiliary Syrians, and they've got Numidians. That combination is actually a little bit weird. Usually what I typically see is 3 auxiliary Syrian archers, because that's just really, really strong. But this is something that it would have cost me a lot to out-skirmish properly. So I did a pike rush, and that's just not something a lot of people are prepared for. A lot of people are not ready for that to happen. We did actually do most of the killing with our Indian armored elephants, but the fact that they are pinned in place by pikes is something that really helps out quite a lot. We've also got a lot of kills in these Hellenic cataphracts, so yeah, that's sort of how Bactria works. You sort of hold in place with your pikes as normal, and then you smash them wherever you can with these Indian armored elephants, with these Hellenic cataphracts. Or you could even smash in with the Hellenic cataphracts and then come in with a follow-up with these Indian armored elephants while they're disordered. And you're probably going to crack right through a sword unit. If they were sort of spears on the flank instead of the... If it was spears and these auxiliary cavalry on the flank instead of the Praetorian Guard on the flank, I probably wouldn't have been able to pull it off like that. But since it was, that's what it was. And I did manage to win that pretty decisively. Anyway, I hope you found this informative. And as always, I hope to see you all next time.